you just take a second to be grateful. I don't take this opportunity lightly that I get to do this job we all get to do that we love. So grateful to be back here. Anytime your season doesn't end in the tournament, there's a disappointment, and that disappointment drives the offseason. There's an urgency. There's always an urgency to improve your team, but when you don't play in the tournament, there's a heightened urgency, and that's the mindset we take to this offseason. Excited to collaborate with our coaches, our football operations department to improve this team to get where we want to be, not just this upcoming season, but seasons after that. With that, I'll take questions. Yeah, as you said, we early in the season we were figuring out who we were, what was our identity. We had a new coordinator who I think did an incredible job, and then middle of the year we played some really good football without Marcus Davenport, who was unfortunately injured. We found a way to play, but as you get later in the seasons, teams adjust and evolve and adapt. Eventually, we ran out of depth. We had those injuries at some point just started to take their toll, and we didn't have enough to overcome it. At the end of the day, injuries happen in this sport, and it's my job to build the 2 deep, the special teams, the player development, all these different things to overcome the adversity that can happen this season. We didn't do that, and that's something we'll keep working towards. But a lot of good things to work off of what we did schematically, and then from a player standpoint, just a couple key positions that we had, and we need more depth at, and we need to continue to improve. Yeah, I have a great relationship with his agent. We've obviously had these conversations for the last couple of years. He had a great season, and I don't know that anybody who is in Minnesota was surprised by that. Danielle walks out of bed and is going to sack the quarterback, pressure, impact the game. That's who he is. So we'll have fruitful dialogue like we always do. It's not just about this season. It's the next season and all these things. And always got to remember, the players have their needs from their standpoint, and I always respect that. And so we'll go to the table and we'll see if we can figure out see if we can talk about a way to kind of find a deal to meet in the middle. Say it again. Great place. Kirk. We've again another person we've had these dialogues the past couple of seasons. Had a great conversation with him a few days ago. Same thing though. It's at the end of the day, we have our interests, he has his, and we get to the table and see if we can figure out a creative solution and how to meet in the middle. That's what every contract negotiation is, and that's what it'll be with him. What we do know is we have a really great quarterback, a great leader, and somebody that we think we can win the ultimate prize with. And so that's ultimately what I focus on, and that's where we're at right now. You never try and pin a need to the draft, the free agency, or whatever. I think you always want to look at the ability to improve your team, draft, free agency, trades, all the different avenues, and figure out the most impactful way to impact your team at the best cost, I guess, in a sense. So, look, I think Ty Chandler had a great season in the second half there, and Alex Massa did some great things for us. And so we'll evaluate that position like we do all positions and see what our best options are going forward. In terms of what other teams are looking for, can you be specific? I got you. Yeah, I personally, I don't know that that's how you're supposed to do it. Now, there is some element of some probability of one player is going to go in a certain place. But, at the end of the day, I think your job is to figure out how to find the right place to pick a player. And that comes in a lot of different ways. You got to evaluate the player, look at some historical basis for what that draft pick value had, and figure out if this is a good decision to make. When you get a little caught up in what other teams are doing, I don't know that that's the best thing to do. Now, in that exact moment, if you're picking 11th and maybe that player might not be there at 11, yeah, those are the conversations you can have. But at this point in the calendar, we're just focused on getting the evaluation, the risk profile correct, at least correct for our building, and then go from there. Similar. I think the qualities that make all great quarterbacks. I think you have to be two players. You have to be able to operate on schedule. When Kevin calls a great play, gets the right look versus the defense, we got to operate at a high level, make the right decision, make an accurate throw. And then there's that second play when sometimes, and I don't think it's very often, I think Kevin's one of the best there is, but when the play doesn't work exactly go as planned, maybe a teammate struggles, and how do you overcome context? That's something we're going to look for. And then obviously from a leadership standpoint, that position sets the tone. You talk about somebody like Kirk, who sets an example for how he works, his process. He's got a phrase, it's not a hobby. And he lives every day that way. And so you need somebody at that position who embodies that for your team. And again, we look at every option. We evaluate everything: players, free agents, trades. I hate to give you a vague answer, but you assess everything that there is, and ultimately you come up with the best option that is affordable to you. I think people assume that trades are these things that just happen because one side wants them or another side wants them. It's not how it works. You always got to find mutual parties and counterparties and things like that. But ultimately, we just got to evaluate every decision and go from there. Can you say that one more time? Yeah, obviously there's a lot of good backs that'll be on the market, and I don't know that a few years ago I would have thought that the position took the kind of maybe the didn't rise as much as other positions in the market, I'll say, and that's always a complex conversation. Just because they're a lower value position right now doesn't mean they don't provide a great impact to a team. And so all it does is take one team, one deal to reset a market and change things. And I'm not going to say that's not going to be this year, but there's a lot of exciting options on the market, and we'll take a look at them like we take a look at every position. I'm sorry, Mike McDaniel is speaking louder than he's ever talked in a draft room I was in, so I can't hear. Yeah, we had a lot of great dialogue last offseason. I think people forget deals rarely happen after 3 years, and there's a reason. 2 years left. There's uncertainty that somebody's got to hold. Either the club's got to hold it or the player's got to hold it. There's new money, old money. How do you look at contracts? Those are very hard conversations to have. And so a lot of them don't get done. We got unbelievably close. We've said it, and we'll continue to say it. We think he's the best wide receiver in the league and should be compensated as such. We think he's one of the best non-quarterbacks in the league. I think he should be compensated as such. And so we'll continue to have those dialogues and those conversations. I've promised them, and I will continue to promise them, that I will not talk about our negotiations. I think this job should be done with integrity. So a lot of the stuff that I hear is completely false, but I can't get up here and tell you what's not true or not false, because that's not how I promised to do this job. But I will tell you that we're excited to have him and continue those conversations, because he's somebody we want around for a long time. For sure. Yeah, obviously, I'm a planner. I'd love to do deals, the sooner the better, but deadlines spur action. That's something that Rob taught me, and it's something that in my first 2 years in the job I've seen is the exact case. They have their reasons for waiting. We have our reasons for wanting to do it sooner. And ultimately, we got to come together and figure out a way to meet in the middle and figure out how to best serve our purposes. From I got in the league, wow. Well, I came to the league kind of clean slate, so I don't know that I had a ton of evaluation of quarterbacks being a commodities trader. But since I got to the league and I got to learn from the loud-speaking guy to the right of me, Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan. You learn about the play and how a play works, and you start with the called play, and then you talk about what happens if an O-lineman gets beat and different things like that. And so we have a framework for how we talk about quarterback. We have a set of questions that we use to kind of provide guardrails for people to talk about them. We have a language and a process. All these things these guys test. But the first thing is the what. Always start there. And if the what and the why don't match, that's a cause to maybe ask some more questions. So I don't want to sit there and say that test versus any other test is good or bad. I love that the league is trying to different people in the league are trying to provide different data information to us to use. It's unfortunate all the way that stuff gets out. That should never get out. Those are private things that the players trust us with, and I know personally that's not something we'd ever let out. And it's also not something we use to say yes or no. It's something to show up and, hey, we have a conversation. Maybe player development goes differently based on what we learned. And so that's how we treat it. Yeah, we talk about it a lot. Something I learned in Cleveland, and I talked to Kevin a lot about it. It's an interesting dynamic. You're talking about a time in a young man's life where they're really rapidly going up their growth curve, strength, all athleticism. We know the athletic peak happens, and it doesn't happen at 20. And so those are things that we talk about, but also because everybody got to stay, college football at large is older. So you have to think about that dynamic. I don't know if there's one answer because you can't go back and study it historically because this is new. So we're just trying to navigate that, and every player, we see their age and maybe what they faced, and we try and make a decision based on all those factors combined. It's interesting. Quarterbacks is one position where I feel like it might be a little different because we don't have a minor league in our sport. You can almost treat those extra years as maybe a couple minor league years, depending on where they're playing, system, how relatable that is to our game. So it's exciting to talk about. There's uncertainty. There's ups, downs, lefts, rights. That's why this makes this hard and fun. We've had conversations with him. I know Kevin's actually had a lot of good conversations with him about that. I think any great player, especially wide receiver, should want to have a great quarterback, accurate, who's going to throw in the football when he's open, and he gets open better than anybody in the league. So that is something that's important. But I think, when I first met Justin, my first day in the league, in Minnesota, he said, Kwesi, I just want to put wins on the board. And so at some point, though, it's got to be a trust in how we're building this going forward to set us up in a sustained window to win for a long time. And, we've got to earn that trust, of course. But I think that's a conversation we have. I think you got to treat players like partners. You got to bring them in and have those conversations with them. And that's something we'll do with Justin. Kevin has a little bit more of those conversations than me in terms of feedback. I know, again, a lot of receivers just, want somebody who can throw them the ball when they're open, can process at a high level, things we talked about, and then be accurate with the football when it's time to be so. That is not something that's once crossed my mind. You got a blue player, blue person. You try and keep those as many of those as you can. Thank you, guys.